I'm Tyler, and this is the AntiSocial Network.
Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
Hey, T-Dog. What is up in his house?
Welcome to your number one source of internet oddities.
My life is a living hell.
There's just so much beauty in the world, you know?
Here we host conversations with interesting people across the internet.
The God you believe in is not only not good, that God made a world filled with liberals.
Curse of the world, unite! You have nothing to lose but your chains.
You haven't heard of them, but I have.
Perhaps I am cringe, but that makes me free.
Join us every Friday for discussions on culture, entertainment, politics, religion, and whatever happens to catch our fancy that week.
Hell is actually real, and Christianity was right all along. Sorry.
Oh.
The cities are decaying, destroyed by decades of leftist policies. Return to monkey.
You're probably thinking this is some pretty deep stuff, and you're right.
This week we are joined once again by Ian Kirkpatrick, our resident robot author and future FBI's most wanted, more than likely at some point, but you never know.
I thought you were going to say best-selling author.
Well, you know, there's two timelines that could possibly spin out of this. One is the timeline where you become a New York Times best-selling author, and the other one is the one where you become the FBI's most wanted serial killer. So, you know, there's lots of ways this could turn out. You never know.
It could be both.
Did you ever see the interview with William Friedkin with The Guardian, where he's the guy who directed The Exorcist, and he told The Guardian in an interview that if he didn't become an artist, he might have become a serial killer?
Oh, I recently saw a JonTron video where he mentioned that in the video.
I found that through that video because that is an amazing find. I mean, I've seen a bunch of William Friedkin movies, and that guy is frigging insane. Like people...
I can for sure say that I have never said if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I would be a serial killer. I can say I have not publicly made that claim yet.
Publicly? I mean, I talk to you all the time, and like, you know, you talk about death with such a callousness. I'm like, you know, this is someone who stared. This is someone who stared at the face of death. Like, you know, this is what it's like to meet Ted Bundy before he became Ted Bundy. No, I'm kidding, but
nah. No. Speaking, it is kind of funny. So yesterday, somebody posted on Minds some meme that had Jeffrey Dahmer as the head picture, and it said, "Once the shelves are empty, all we'll have is each other." And then like two different people tagged me in it. So there is something to be said. I haven't even released that book yet, but I did just write a 23-page research paper for school that was all Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah. She likes serial killers, what can you say? It's
you can't even see it from here. I do have, if you look very closely, there's that, I don't know if I can point at it correctly. Right there's that figure right in front of the explosion.
Yeah.
That's a Jeffrey Dahmer bobblehead. And then over on my shelf, there's also a Jeffrey Dahmer action figure.
That's up there. That's up there with bad ideas for action figures.
I have not actually gotten the socks yet, but I do have a cup that has Jeff on it, and it says, "You look like a snack." I did not purchase that for myself. My best friend sent me that as like a Christmas gift last year.
You know, there's two sides to that coin. There's the I bought this for myself, and then there's my friends know me so well that they know I would like it. Which either one of those sides of that coin are not good. To
be fair, the people that tagged me in that Jeffrey Dahmer meme yesterday, I just responded with pictures of Jeffrey Dahmer.
This goes back to something I talk about all the time, which is like the feminine obsession with true crime that I don't understand. There's so many women that are just absolutely obsessed with true crime serial killer stuff, and I get it because I like that stuff, but you know, the volume is what's intense.
I should say this very specifically, like this obsession, this interest specifically in Jeffrey Dahmer does not go over to a bunch of other serial killers as well. It's very specifically his story, because it's the story for, if you look at the trajectory and the return, his story is a modern day story of the prodigal son, because he falls and falls and falls. And when he is caught, he's unlike a lot of other serial killers in his background, where he was not from an abused background. He didn't have any sexual, physical, whatever abuse. He just had kind of neglectful parents in one way or another. And he was socially ostracized and didn't develop socially. So he's not from the same sort of background. And then he didn't have the Machiavellian, the dark triad, like most serial killers. He didn't start fires. He wasn't known for bedwetting, and he didn't abuse animals when he was a child. So he had none of the signs as a child of somebody who would develop that way. And he actually had a pet dog when he was a young child that he loved a lot, but he had to give it away when he moved to Bath, Ohio. And then all of the dead animals that he collected the bones of when he was a teenager, he actually just picked them up when they were already dead. And there's also a story that's mentioned in, I think, Brian Master's book, where he yelled at a classmate for driving too fast and almost hitting a neighborhood animal.
Oh man, that's...
So he was actually... So then you have that different background for him, but then with the trajectory of him where he was one completely cooperative when he was captured, the only reason we know all of his victims is because he completely cooperated with the cops when they asked him to. And I have this book over here called Dahmer Detective, where it was written by the detective that did his interrogations. And it goes through the identification process. And he never would have had to talk about any of the early kills. Nobody would have known about Steve Hicks or Stephen Suomi if Jeff hadn't mentioned them. And he ID'd all of the people. He never told a single lie when he was being interviewed. And then in 1993, he asked to be baptized. That's when he met Pastor Ratcliffe. And then Pastor Ratcliffe continued a weekly Bible study with Jeff after baptizing him. And so it shows, if you look into that background, and you can get Pastor Ratcliffe's book too to see that interaction. And it shows a prodigal son of a person who doesn't believe that they deserve God's grace. But with the pastor coming and saying, you deserve it. Do not kill yourself because the state has given you life. So now live your life for God. And then him trying to turn his life around the best that he can to repent. It's the story that any of us at our lowest point would want.
You know what I mean though when I talk about the true crime fascination though, right?
Oh yeah, I do know. Freaking even reading these, it's Jeff got arrested and immediately he's got like a box full of letters from women that want to marry him. And he's like, what the frick?
Okay, first off, I'm gay. Second of all,
he's like, what is wrong with these people? Can you just take these letters? But you see that like a lot of the time when some notorious something or another gets arrested. There was like that Boston bomber, runner bomber, whatever, with like the tear tattoo on his cheek, and women were like, oh, he's too cute to go to jail. No, yeah. He's a terrorist. Stop it.
I remember Rob Dyke, he found a bunch of clips for that, for why would you put that on the internet, where he was just like finding those people, was like, why are you thirsty for this Muslim extremist terrorist who killed multiple people?
They can change him. They can change him. It's like that chick that did the video for Putin that was like, I wish I was your mother because I would have loved you and you wouldn't have become like this.
Oh, man. But then you see the reverse version of that, the Sam Hyde, I wish I was your dad, and you realize just how weird it is. So, did you see that? Is
it that? No, I didn't actually.
Sam Hyde did a parody version of it called "I Wish I Was Your Dad." So I'll have to dig it up and send it to you. It's a Sam Hyde video. So
do you wish that Sam Hyde was your dad?
Oh no, my dad listens to this, so I'm not going to say that. But
well, in an alternate universe where your current dad is not an option for your dad, who would be your second pick dad?
Oh, that's a really hard question to ask. I don't know. That seems like some really weird, like Freudian some stuff. Like, well, choose who do you want your dad to be? I mean, like, what the frick?
It feels like a question that'd get you like really in trouble, that'll come back to haunt you for your answer.
Yeah.
No matter what you say.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to a lighter topic. How is what is the name of your dog again?
This is Tate.
I know you told me that. I know you told me that, but but this is some premium dog content we've got going right now, so.
I know. He's just scared right now because it's raining hard.
I can see it in his eyes. It's so sad.
Yeah. But he just makes him extra cuddly. So have your premium content.
There you go. So anyway, today is I'm gonna try to have this out for May 1st, and today is the launch of your new book. So
which is May Day. Which was picked on purpose for a book about bombs.
Is that the logic behind that?
Yeah, May 1st I picked it for May Day.
Okay, because I know it was off kind of. It's a little odd releasing a book not on like a Tuesday, because Tuesday's generally the day when things get released. So I was curious what the logic.
Oh, because I didn't know that. I'm not very smart. I kind of just pick days based on the day.
That's fine, but I mean, like normally, if you look at a new book release, they almost always release new things on Tuesdays. I think that has something to do with the way that they tabulate, sales, they want to release it relatively early in the week so that they can count a whole week's worth of sales in their reporting, I guess. But
I could imagine.
But I don't know the exact reason. Tuesday's always been kind of a weird day because it's not Monday, but it's also. It's located early enough in the week that it's still kind of a day where you're, willing to go out and do things on an evening, I guess. So I guess there's there's probably a lot of logic to that, but with Amazon. Go ahead.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of just pick only on the date specifically. Like Bodymore was specifically October 31st because of the spooky vibes in it, and so the other two Bodymores will be also on the 31st. This is May Day. Dead End Drive was on the 13th of October because 13 Dead End Drive.
Well, you're also releasing books on Amazon, so it's a little different.
Well, I'm releasing them everywhere. It's not through Amazon. You can get them pretty much anywhere books are sold, including Walmart and overseas. So it's not just on Amazon. They're just within the distribution net.
Okay, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear they're overseas because a couple of my podcasting friends are overseas, and I would recommend they go pick them up just to kind of get because I didn't know.
I just had somebody ask about what other stores they were in other than Amazon because he wanted to get it but doesn't support Amazon, and then he said he was in Australia, and I had to go and I went and looked up some Australian independent bookstores, and it's in all of those.
That works. I don't know how the back end for book distribution works, but I'm glad that it's widely available. So
yeah, you can also order it at your libraries because it's through the library distribution net. So if you don't want to actually buy the book or you'd like to share it with your community, any of my 3 books, you can just go request it at your library.
Ooh. So I guess do we want to start off describing the book, or do we want to start off describing the controversy around the book? Because
we can describe the book first, which I got right here. It's a beautiful cover.
Okay, it is cool.
Yeah, it also looks like YouTube on the back. It's great.
Oh yeah, I love the back end of it. It's very very well framed. I like it.
Thank you.
So
the book itself is about if that was what you're gonna ask.
Well, I know what the book's about. You told me about it, but how do you describe it to people who aren't familiar with it?
I don't know if you can hear the thunder.
Yeah, I can hear it on my end. It's rumbling pretty bad.
We just have some questionable wiring over here.
Yeah, someone told the power grid to kill itself, and it did for 10 seconds.
I mean, you were talking about the controversy of this book. The United States government is like, end it.
George Soros doesn't want the truth getting out through this book.
Funny story is like when stuff was happening at the beginning or middle of February, just like as Ukraine was, stuff was first getting mentioned.
The transformer right out here on the floor is sparking. Okay.
Are you fine just jumping right back into it now, or do you want?
Yes, I mean, there's nothing that I can do.
Oh yeah.
I was just informed the transformer right outside is sparking, so power may or may not leave again.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, your house is going to catch on fire momentarily.
No, it's across the street.
Well, we're watching her final moments, guys. This is it.
We do need this on camera.
We're gonna catch her final moments of life before her house explodes in a glorious.
I was always told that all of my books would sell after I die. So if tonight is the last night, I am leaving it to you guys to buy all of my books.
Well, that's good timing right there. I mean, weirdly enough, this is the second podcast I've done today where the person I talked to said, there's a storm happening at the other end that might end my life right now. So you never know.
Well, I don't think it'll end my life.
But yeah, you were just when we started, you were just describing the content of the book. So
okay, so the book is about a Ukrainian YouTuber with like 5 subscribers in the middle of nowhere, Ukraine, right along the Russian border. The name of his town is actually called Nowhere, a la Courage the Cowardly Dog style. And he just makes explosions. If you imagine the stereotypical video of like really bad video of like a drunken Eastern European in the middle of nowhere doing weird things, that's like him screaming.
It's like it's prototypical FPS Russia, but with no viewers.
Like, yeah. And so he just does explosions. Well, one day a couple of foreigners show up and say, hey, we would like to sponsor you. Here are some military-grade explosive materials. And Jan is like, cool. And so he goes and uses these explosive materials and obviously creates a much bigger explosion than the little pet explosions he's been doing. And being along the Russian border, the Russians are like, excuse me, is Ukraine attacking us? And so the Russians start moving in to this small town in Ukraine to look for whoever did that explosion. And now the Ukrainians, because they haven't done anything, but now they're being accused by their neighbor of starting something, think that the Russians are false flagging them to come and invade them. And so this all escalates as Jan gets a couple more views. That video that he did the bigger explosion on got him like 200 views. And he's like, I have to post another video. I'm basically going viral right now. And so while his town is kind of filled with Russians trying to find the source of the explosion, he goes to another spot along the border and does another explosion that's even bigger than the last one. Well, the next morning, the sponsors return and go, we would like to take you to America to do a television show. Lo and behold, these sponsors are actually American agents that have been trying to spark a war with Russia so they could justify invading and fighting Russia. And we saw an opportunity in this kid. So anyway, that's the basic gist of the story. The kid then gets basically kidnapped to the United States, no passport, no way to escape, and his phone is hacked, so he can't call anybody. So then it becomes his attempt to figure out, or then it becomes his adventure to learn what is going on and then escape the United States feds that are using him as a patsy.
So, before my horribly mortified viewers go much farther, can you describe when you started writing this book? So,
last spring.
So yes, this is not a book that you just started writing in the month after the war in the Ukraine happened because you want to accuse the U.S. government of false flagging a war. This is
absolutely not. No. You can go to my YouTube channel and see me talking about it a year ago, and you can go to my Instagram page where I posted a screenshot of the project when I finished the first draft of the project at the end of last spring or in June. I think it might have been June.
Yes, this is something that I saw happening to you as the book was nearing its final stages of development back in February, because at that point you had already basically printed the final draft just as the war was getting underway, and you were it was rather clear that you weren't kind of expecting an actual war to happen before you published the book.
So typical promotion guides, if you want to start getting it in Book List, which is a pretty big magazine, and they belong to ALA, which is the American Library Association. If you want a book review from them, if you want your book to possibly be considered for the New York Times book reviews, you have to submit it at least 6 months in advance to release. So I had actually submitted this book to a couple different magazines and book reviewers starting in November of last year. And then you can also see I posted a picture and got some art made for New Year's. And so I have a Happy New Year's with the main character of this book and the love interest from January 1st. And then I posted, hey, this is just on NetGalley January 31st, because that was the first time that it was released to the public for advanced readers. And then 2 to 3 weeks into it being released to people, the actual Ukraine situation started happening. So I released my thing way before any of it happened. That some of the people have noticed. I just got a review today that said, oh, hey, look, a comment on the current crisis. And I'm like, no, my book is cursed.
So what was the flow of responses like in before and after that? Well, did you get any reviews back before the actual war happened?
Oh no, because it was hardly picked up at all in general, because it's satire. And when I was setting it up in January, I was like, this is going to be the most inconsequential book that I write/release in my career, because nobody likes satire, nobody cares about satire, or very few care about satire, and nobody gives a crap about Ukraine or Russia. Like a lot of people that have picked it up right now, many of them, it doesn't feel like they've realized that Ukraine existed before 2 months ago.
Yeah, I mean the meme went out, halfway 2 weeks into the war is, everyone goes from being an expert on global economics to being an expert on global on global international conflicts at the moment that a war happens, because that's what Twitter is useful for. And suddenly everyone becomes the master of diplomacy, and everyone has some sort of hidden knowledge and everything that's happening. And here you are, you're writing a book that was designed to be topical a year ago, and now it's like really kind of hilariously unintentionally inflammatory now for reasons that have nothing to do with you.
It wasn't even meant to be topical a year ago. It was just something that I was driven to drive. And what's built into it is more the historical relationships between Ukraine and Russia and America. And so you kind of, if you know a little bit about kind of the chess game that Russia and America has been playing using Ukraine for a while, then their relationships make a little more sense in the book. But otherwise, it wasn't meant to be topical at all. The whole idea for the book itself initially came from when I was watching Strange Angel. I don't know if you know what that show is, but it was a brief show on HBO about Jack Parsons, the father of modern rocket fuel. And he was super excited. That character I really, really liked, because he was super excited about the rocket fuel and about sending something into space. And I just wanted to create a character that was as passionate and mildly eccentric, because I really liked that style. And that's what eventually created Jan. Is all I wanted was this character who, he's going to be super passionate about explosives. Maybe he actually tastes different materials, and that's how he decides to put them together. And so then all of a sudden I had this character named Jan who was good at explosives, but I didn't have a story for him. And so then I remember sitting with my mom and talking about this character, and I wanted to have a story for him. And it was while I was working on Bodymore, I think it was. And I told her about this character, but I thought, I don't know what to do with him. I don't know if he's a side character or a main character, or what his purpose even is in the story, or why he does explosives. And she said YouTube. And that just made everything happen, where yes, he is doing YouTube, and these people show up to give him more explosives. So it was literally had nothing to do with anything I started writing it.
So what was the intended satire, as opposed to the unintentional satire that ended up coming about as a result of it?
Well, I knew that it was going to involve the United States government, but that's more or less what it is. It's just lampooning that the government uses people. But I don't even think I didn't even set out to do that necessarily, because I don't think that heavily into what I'm writing when I'm writing it. I just kind of get it in blurbs. So I knew, like, the first couple of chapters before I started, which was Jan has a YouTube channel, and that's like his normal, because I have to figure out what the status quo is and then what interrupts his status quo. And then that leads into what becomes the end of the first act, because there has to be a major change in the end of the first act. And so I knew that his status quo was he does videos for YouTube. And how do you change that? Okay, somebody comes in and gives him more stuff to make his channel bigger, which is those CIA agents, whatever, those American feds. And so that makes his channel bigger. And then eventually I knew that at the end of that first act, he was going to be flown to America. But that's all that I knew when I started writing.
So other than the fact that you talk about the feds a lot, you're not that political of a person, all that considered, because from what you've said to me. So
generally I stay out of politics. I didn't even want to consider this political satire, but I don't feel like there's a way to avoid it when you're saying that the feds use people.
I mean, I know that there's a couple of lines in there that get a little spicy, where you like accuse the feds of being like reptilians and like.
Hey, that's Blake. Blake is like a 2004 liberal. Like, look at her. She's got the blue hair. 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 She's got the bl
She's like the kind of person that watched Loose Change once and it changed her life. You know what I mean?
I mean, she's like her dad works for the mainstream media and she hates him. The first time that you run into, no, the second time you run into her in the story, the first time you run into her in the story is when Jan first gets to America and she's like moving through the airport because she just came home from her mom's house because obviously her parents are divorced and her mom lives in North Carolina and her dad lives in DC. And she's 22, but of course she's living at home because she doesn't have to pay her dad. And he can't kick her out because he's on TV. It's going to look bad for him if he kicks his own daughter out of his house. But the second time that you meet her is when Jan is running down the street because he's just gotten away from the feds. And she's standing in the middle of the street. It's the middle of the night and she's egging a house. And he's like, oh my gosh, that is the beautiful woman, my future wife that I met at the airport. I need to go talk to her. Because he does believe that the first time he sees her, that is the one. And so then he goes up to her and she thinks that he's a Fed because he's wearing the Hawaiian shirts and all of the Feds that go into other countries are on vacation. It's standard issue vacation wear for the Feds. They, of course, did give him that shirt when he arrived in America. And they go inside after she believes that he's, okay, not a Fed. And you find out that she was egging her own house because it was her father's house. Like, she bullies her own father. As they're walking up to her room, she's shit-talking her dad to Jan, and she's like, you can't be part of the resistance if you're making six figures on television talking for the machine, Dad. And then she goes into her room, and he just turns up the television to block her out.
When is this nominally set? Like, is this supposed to be like Trump-era politics, or like what is this supposed to be kind of?
It's ambiguous contemporary. Because it doesn't specifically go left or right for any of them. It's just the main target is the federal government. The only president that it actually mentions is Bill Clinton because they make a Bill Clinton joke. Since Jan's personal agent, when he gets into America, is named Bill Cosby. When he lands, all of the Feds are nicknamed whatever they want to be nicknamed, and most of them are actors. Like the first two that meet him in Ukraine are Bob Dylan and Tom Cruise. Then he meets Patrick Bateman on the airplane. He also meets up Bob Arnold on the airplane. And then he lands, and his personal agent in Washington, D.C. is Bill Cosby. He also gets out of the plane, and the Feds have set up, obviously, this like psyop of pretending he's got all these fans in America because they told him he's got 1 million fans in America. But it's just all the Feds called in all the other Feds and their children to come and hold signs and cheer him on as he comes through the Washington, D.C. airport. And they're saying, Bill, 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 and singing Bill Nye the Science Guy, because all they know about this kid is that he does experiments in the woods, and they don't know what else to say. And so it's kind of just a shit show. But so they mention, they're chanting Bill, and the dude's name is Bill, and so then Jan is like, you guys really like Bill. Does that mean for anything? And then he hears about Bill Clinton. And so then they make a joke about Bill Clinton having special positions for women in the White House.
Oh my God! Well, that's such an.
And I think they make a joke about Hillary Clinton too. But that's pretty much it. Everything else is just about the Feds because let's face it, the Feds really actually control everything.
In real life or in the book?
Yes.
I was gonna say this is the answer that could actually get you into trouble, depending on how you phrase it. But
I mean, no, this book would get me in trouble because in conclusion, America's the bad guy in this.
Yeah.
Not in everything, but in this situation, they did kidnap a random Ukrainian national and then tried to pretend that he was there illegally when they brought him in there.
I mean, the federal government, either the FBI or the CIA, are very famous for their phishing attempts. I wouldn't go as far to say false flag stuff, because that kind of like a, can of worms you're opening up, and you're making some very specific accusations when you say that. But we know for a fact that the FBI has been caught all the time, like, trying to instigate crimes or sending their agents into places and making them worse. Like that was the entire the Michigan thing with the Whitmer kidnapping trial. It turns out, like, I think most of them ended up getting off because it turned out like by the time the group got so deeply intruded by the feds that by the time it actually came down to kidnapping the governor, it was like 4 feds and 1 guy who didn't realize and everyone else was a fed. So,
I have a joke like that in here too, because Blake says something about like 5 out of 6 dudes in some whatever group are actually there to turn you in. I don't think that's in this last speech that she gives, but there's so the lizard brains come up earlier on because she explains to Jan what happened to him, which was he was kidnapped to be used by the feds. And after he asks why would they do that, and if Americans really care that much about money, she's like, bro, they're not Americans. In fact, I think they're not even human beings. And so then he goes, well, if they're not human, what are they? And she goes, fucking lizard brains. And then she explains that the lizard brain thing goes back to some psychological thing where it's the mammalian brain versus the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain was the non-evolved version that became the human brain, where you never got empathy. So all you care about is money and sex and eating. She says the lizard brains only give 3 Fs: fornication, fortune, and feeding.
So it's like a Machiavellian sociopath kind of personality.
Yeah. And she's like, the number of psychopaths in DC are about the same number as politicians. That's not a coincidence.
Is that actually true?
I think so. I've heard other people say the same thing.
That sounds right.
Then you got a part here at the end. I was looking for Blake's speech because they set up an ambush on the reflecting pool in DC to meet with the feds because they got to get Jan out of there somehow. And Jan actually gets on these guys because they keep this whole entire book, they completely disgrace Ukraine and keep calling it a ward of Russia, or they call it Russia. Like, you see how little American government really cares about Ukraine because they call Jan Russian. They say that he's from Russia, and he has to continually tell them that he's not Russian, he's Ukrainian, and that matters to him because it's his identity. And his small town is called Nida, which is Ukrainian for nowhere, but they continually call it shit all because they just don't care. And so in the end, after Jan is getting out of their grasp, they say, well, of course you guys are working with Russia because once you're Russia's pet, you're always going to be Russia's pet. And they make some claim that since communism had been in Ukraine, then it will always be a communist country. And Jan says, Ukraine was never a communist country. It was controlled by the Soviets. But if you believe that communism can never be removed from a country, then isn't America a communist country? Because what was the Red Scare? And so he has that situation there. And he eventually stands up to the feds and says, I don't know what you are, but you're not American. And then Blake to the feds straight up says, fucking lizard brains.
I don't want you to spoil too much of the book because obviously we want people to read it and enjoy it.
Yeah, go read it for Blake's speech at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that it's interesting that angle ends up being so much of the thing. I mean, obviously, like, there's an angle about which that could be read somewhat not good in light of what's ever happening in Ukraine right now, because as you know, as much as Russia is the instigator here, like, there's a way that the U.S. itself is kind of just making itself look absolutely, absurd in the way it handles itself. Like, the people that go on Twitter and put up, 100,000 pro-Ukraine things when they've never cared about Ukraine at all before, until the moment that social media told them they're supposed to care about Ukraine. Like, I'll be the first person to say that the war is, Russia's the bad guy in the war. And, if there's some way we can help Ukraine, that's a good thing. But people just act so sanctimonious over it. And there's probably an element of an angle that's worth, tackling there. I don't know. I don't think that, obviously, because you didn't write the book about the actual conflict that's still ongoing at the time we're talking right now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't map cleanly onto it in a way that's helpful. Like, if someone were to read your book, they'd be like, oh, this woman's just like, she's super, super based and red-pilled, and she thinks that the the U.S. government is instigating the war in Ukraine right now, and like, no, that's not the point of the book. But it is one of those things where it's like, you know, there's obviously nuances that could be played in, but people don't want to entertain nuance right now. It's, you know, you have to.
I know, I've already been told in at least one review that is posted on the Goodreads, if you want to go look at it, that, the relationship with the Russians is problematic because of what's happening right now. Like, I'm not rewriting a book I wrote a year ago, but the direction that came with how the United States was intervening has more to do with America's history of interventionalism. It has nothing to do with the situation right now, but we know that America gets its head into other countries and has also pillaged other countries specifically for oil. Like, we know that they do that in the Middle East.
So
it's not demonizing anybody. It's literally multiple times throughout. One of the main themes of this book is that the United States, or not the United States, the governments and the people of every country are not the same thing. And so you can't really treat citizens of a country as if they are the people or the politicians of the country, because the government works outside of what the people want. The main way that Blake wanted to fix this problem was to get Jan onto television, since her dad was a news broadcaster, so that she could tell Jan's story straight to the American people, because the American people wouldn't be agreeing with what the United States government was doing by kidnapping this kid. So governments and people are not the same thing.
Yeah.
But we know every country has a history of doing some shady things.
Yeah, I mean, Ukraine has very iffy recent past, former not recent past, like lots of different things that we could go into, but that aren't actually pertinent to the war itself. But, you know, that's the correct opinion, is that a person is not a representative of their country. You know, people, like, a lot of people give crap to the Ukraine for the Azov battalion, you know, the supposed white nationalist-based fascist battalion that's running around just straight up murdering people. And, you know, if there's any truth to that, I don't know, but that doesn't reflect on Ukraine and its right as a sovereign nation. Like, that has nothing to do with the government. That has nothing, and those are bad people. And Zelensky doesn't reflect his country. He's a leader who's dealing with crisis, and every bad thing.
It's the same thing with us. Is Biden doesn't represent what the American people want at all. In fact, he's actively working against what the majority of Americans want.
She brought politics into this. That wasn't my fault, but
you brought it into this. But in general, one of the other things that come into this book that also makes that separation is you've got the difference between Alex, who's Jan's best friend, and then Jan, who lives in the middle of nowhere. So Alex used to live in the middle of nowhere, and then he moved to Sumy to get a job. And so Alex has the more, he also kind of works for the government. And so he's got more of the opinion of, I hate Russia, be careful of Russians, don't trust the Russians. You also get this with Boris, who's Jan's boss at work. And Jan's boss at work lived through Soviet Russia, and his father lived through the Holodomor. And Boris actually brings up the Holodomor when he's talking to Jan. And so there's a lot of distrust for Russians in general. But then when it's brought to Jan and he's talking about it, he's like, I drink with the Russians on the border. They're my neighbors. They're my brothers. And so Jan is looking at it as on an individual basis, whereas these other people that are in his life are looking at it as the country and painting it all as the country. And so that is a continual theme that comes up of look at the people which are separate from the country.
This is the level of nuance that social media is not prepared to parse. So, I mean, what is your overall response to the thing? Are you prepared to like write it out and like, you know, pretend like retroactively, like, oh yeah, I wrote this satire book about, you know, U.S. false flagging. Like, are you just kind of having to defend it? Like, what do you think the best way forward is, depending on how the book launch goes?
Well, I mean, people need to start picking it up and reading it first. I've only had like 4 or 5 people respond to it because, again, still nobody cares. As much as you'll see the flags of Ukraine on Twitter, still people are not really picking up books about Ukrainians.
But if there was a controversy, would you were you tempted to lean into it at all? Like what?
No, I just tell the truth. Okay. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I'll just talk about all of the nuance, and you can not believe me or you can crap on me. I got the receipts that it's all on social media a freaking year ago. But
she's got too many principles to sell out and pretend that she wrote an ultra-based anti-American book. So,
I mean, it is anti-American government, which I think a lot of people can get on with being anti-intervention and starting proxy wars. I don't think the majority of Americans are really interested in starting proxy wars to take money from other countries.
Well, there you go. So let's see if we can get.
Maybe that's not true. You know, maybe all your comments could be like, "No, we want to steal everybody's money, and we don't care if we step on other people from other countries to do it."
I don't know. Is there? There's probably a joke to be made about whatever political party wants to, pillage the Middle East and just take over the world and run. I don't know, but where can people get your book? Let's focus on getting this book to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list before we
do it.
Yeah, before we have to parse out these complex details.
If you want to have actual controversy, somebody's got to get this to Tucker Carlson to be like, look at this book. Look at this book that says the United States government started the false flag over there in Ukraine, and then actually make it the fake controversy that makes me go on national television to explain why it's not what you're saying it is.
Yeah, I mean, all you need to do is answer with one sentence. I wrote it a year before the thing. It's not about it. It's like, and then you can go, and then you bring out the nuance.
You can only give me that if you think that I'm psychic. Okay.
But yeah, we have to astroturf Ian so that she's on Tucker Carlson. I don't know how to do this, but
yeah, good luck with that. Anyway,
I will use my extremely limited networking powers, and we'll see what we can do. But we'll see.
Hey, it could be magic. Like, I wrote this a year ago. That was magic. That this happened right when I'm trying to release it. You never know what kind of voodoo you can have on the internet.
Oh my god, serendipity is really weird. So I was this is unrelated, but I was writing a story about the Tennessee health commissioner who just retired this past Thursday. Like, out of the blue, no warning. All of a sudden, like, she did the most important health person in the state of Tennessee just straight up quits. I spent all morning 2 hours trying to get on the phone with her, and they basically turned down 3 separate media quests. So I go out that evening to do separate media coverage at a different event that's just like a health entrepreneur event. And lo and behold, I run into the health commissioner at that event because she's working on becoming a consultant for health investment. And I was like, "Are you the health commissioner that just retired?" And she said, "Oh yeah, can I borrow you for 1 second for a comment?" And she's like, "No." And she walked away. It's like, serendipity did not work out in my favor that day, unfortunately. But you don't. But hopefully, in your case, maybe we can astroturf this into not astroturf the controversy, but astroturf the book. Let's. Where can people? Where's the best place for someone to get it that'll help you? You said there's lots of places, but is there any place in particular that helps?
I mean, if you do it on Amazon, then it bumps it up in all of the sale rankings on Amazon so more people can find it. It's not going to be hard to get it into the top 10 for Satire if you just get a couple of them. But you can also get it like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, bookshop.org, which is for specifically independent bookshops, and they donate to independent bookshops. Look at any of your independent bookshops to order it.
Well, yeah.
Pretty much anywhere, including Walmart. It's not... I think it only exists on Target up until about release, and then they start removing books from Target. But all of my books are still on Walmart. Target just has a limited supply of books on their website.
Well, let's say the answer is Amazon now. Unless you have an ethical issue with Jeff Bezos's dick rocket, then I get it. But if we can astroturf it on Amazon, that would be awesome. Let's see what we can do.
Yes.
Everyone go buy a copy.
If you can astroturf Matt Walsh, you can astroturf this. Okay?
Yeah, well, Matt, we'll see. We got to get it in someone's hands. We'll see what. Someone will pick up one of your books one day, and they'll be like, "This chick's onto something." But
look, they're all topical. This one had a bunch of this other one had a bunch of murder in it for money to take over the estate. This other one was about the deaths in Baltimore. How is that not topical? And then this one is in Ukraine. What's the next? The next one I think that's not in Baltimore is in Nevada. It has to do with Nephilim.
Ooh, what kind of topical like event's gonna happen in Nevada next? Who knows?
Agreed. Well, no, I shouldn't say agreed. So that one's gonna be about money. It has to do with a petty thief that breaks into a house, discovers the old guy is dead, and then he also discovers that he has developed the Midas touch.
What is the timeline for your upcoming releases other than Boom Boom?
So Plead More, Body More, which is the second Baltimore book, is aimed for October of this year, the end of October this year. If you want to get your hands on it early, just follow me on social media, because I'll let you all know when it goes into ARC and when I'm releasing it to early readers. And if Ghost Walks, which is the Nevada one, goes as it's supposed to, that will be sometime in spring next year. If that doesn't happen, then you can still look forward to the third Body More in October of next year.
Well, there you go. That's everyone should go.
And Jeffrey Dahmer's book will come out in spring, either next year. If I give up on Ghost Walks and switch back to the Jeffrey Dahmer book, it'll come out in spring one of these years.
Oh man,
that book gets a May 10th release specifically, so that I can talk about Jeff being baptized, because that was his baptism date.
Oh man, I look forward to that one in particular, because that one's going to be the really spicy one. So we'll see how that one turns out. This is her magnum opus here, people. This is her book.
The Jeff one.
We talked earlier today, and you said that you thought the Bodymore trilogy is going to be your masterpiece. But I'm like, I know this girl. I know her passion is. It's gonna wind up being the Dahmer book. But
I had to put that one aside earlier, because I was like, I don't feel like I'm fully getting into this the way that I need to. And then when I was doing my research paper the last couple of days, I opened up one of my favorite Jeff books and was just rereading over some of the passages. And I'm like, I need to reread this again before I write this book, because there is some details in there that I need to transpose. Like, there are some heavy details about the dismemberment specifically, but the philosophy in that book is also amazing.
All right. Well, everyone go buy her book.
But I hope to take you on a ride.
Well, yeah. Everyone go buy her book. It was great talking again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyler.
Have a good night.
Don't die.
The AntiSocial Network is a Groupthink Productions and cultural review podcast. Editing, hosting, and producing are by Tyler Hummel, art by Crystal Cali, and original music is composed by Guap Squad Gang and Melissa Lafira. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below and tell us anyone you think would be a good guest for the show. Thank you for listening.